Welcome, action fans, and thanks for joining us for another edition of All 90s Action All the Time. I'm your host, Scott Murphy, and today we're looking at our very first Arnold Schwarzenegger film and the third collaboration between Arnie and director James Cameron. Right, that's right, today's film is the spy action comedy True Lies. Alongside me to talk about this one, I have a very special guest in the form of the Rocky Minute podcast host, Doug Greenberg. How are you doing, Doug? Welcome on the show.
Thank you, Scott. I'm doing awesome. Thank you so much for having me on this podcast to talk about just one of my favorite action films, not just of the '90s, but one of the greatest action films that I've seen.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll look forward to delving into it. It is certainly a fun movie.
How'd it go at the convention, honey?
You were the big hit of the show. It's fantastic. I love the computer business.
For 15 years, Harry Tasker's been leading a double life.
Mr. President, one of our best men is inside.
Transmitting now.
Right on time.
I don't believe I've met you before.
Rehnquist. Harry Rehnquist.
Listen to the following code word. Helen. Helen.
Now, they're about to collide.
What's your exit strategy?
I'm gonna walk right out of the front gate.
May I see your invitation, please?
Sure. Here's my invitation.
Yeah, that worked good. Right out the old front gate.
Can you lean back a second?
Mr. Tasker's office.
Hi, it's Helen. Is he in?
Harry's in a sales meeting, Mrs. Tasker.
It's not like he's saving the world or anything.
Well, see, this is the problem with terrorists. They're really inconsiderate when it comes to people's schedules. Could you press the button for the top floor, please?
Hi, Helen. Harry forgot something back at the office.
Whenever I can't sleep, I just ask him to tell me about his day. 6 seconds and I'm out.
Maybe it's just that you're not in touch with your feminine side.
Harry! What were you doing there?
You wouldn't believe me if I told you. Do you know what this is? It's a snow cone maker. Is it a water heater?
From James Cameron, director of Aliens and T2, Arnold Schwarzenegger.
It's a Soviet Mirv 6 from an SS-22N launch vehicle.
I married Rambo.
Jamie Lee Curtis.
Have you ever killed anyone?
Yeah, but they were all bad.
True Lies.
What can I say? I'm a spy.
So today's background stats for the film, True Lies, was released on July 15th, 1994. It was written and directed by the aforementioned James Cameron. Critically, it is currently sitting on 71% on Rotten Tomatoes based on 56 reviews, 63% on Metacritic based on 17 reviews. It has a 7.3 out of 10 on IMDb and a 3.6 on Letterboxd. So pretty good scores all round, particularly for this podcast. Box office wise, it made $365 million, $0.3 million off of $100 million budget. Also, one of the first films to have a $100 million budget. And that made it the third biggest film of 1994, putting it just ahead of the Flintstones, which was a surprise massive hit.
Yeah, I'll say.
Yeah. People are still surprised by just how big a film the Flintstones was in 1994. But it also put it quite a long way behind Forrest Gump in second, which made like over 600 million. So like, I think almost close to 700.
And what was the number two film that you said? Forrest Gump was number one.
No, Forrest Gump was the number two film of 1994. True Lies was the number three. The Lion King was the number one of 1994, which was
makes sense.
Which made just an incredible amount of money, like over 900 million. So by quite a landslide, The Lion King kicked 1994's ass.
Well, even still, I mean, those are a couple of monsters that True Lies had to go up against with The Lion King and Forrest Gump. But by all metrics, like this movie was a hit. It was a success.
Yep.
And I really, I didn't delve too much into reviews when I was like looking into this film, but what are the negative reviews? I mean, in my research, I saw that there were some Arab defamation leagues that were after him for having Arab terrorists, the terrorists portrayed as Arabs. But what are the negatives saying about it?
I think like some people it was the stuff like in terms of last month's episode we covered Speed, and I did mention in the Speed episode it's nice to cover a 90s action film that is completely in no way problematic. But I think like some of the negative points are the kind of which is some of the negative things are the kind of what was kind of perceived as casual racism and casual sexism. Both of which I can kind of understand, and we can get a bit more into that when those kind of things arise. But I think that was partly it, and also like I think like of the more negative ones, which I don't think there was a ton of. Like maybe the other thing was the thing of tone in terms of like it's always difficult when you're mixing two different genres, when you're mixing action and comedy, to get kind of the precise right tone for people, and it doesn't work for everybody. And this is kind of like a weirdly structured film. I like, as much as I do like this movie, it is we go through basically the first act is mainly action with some comedy. The second act is pretty much entirely comedy, and then the third act is again action with a bit of comedy. So like, well, that's how I view it.
That's interesting. I didn't think of it that way, but it is interesting.
Yeah. So and also,
I just always like the mixture, and this is, and in addition to the Rocky Minute podcast, I also host with Craig Cohen and Ryan Rebalkin the Sylvester Stallone podcast, where we go. We've been kind of going one episode each through Sylvester Stallone's filmography, and good and the bad and the ugly. We tell it honestly. We're not fanboys to the point where we just love and accept everything he's done. And in one of our biggest criticisms of Sylvester Stallone is his inability to mix in comedy, because he just doesn't have the right instincts for comedy, where Arnold Schwarzenegger is the complete opposite. He gets it. And this film is a perfect portrayal. Of course, he's got, Tom Arnold to bounce off of, which, helps. But I mean, even take a film like Kindergarten Cop, like he does comedy well. And here we have a film where it's like a mixture of like serious action. Like when you think of action, you think of explosions and insane stunts, equipment like Harrier jets, and it has that, but it has the comedy mixed in, and it doesn't take me out of it. Yeah, it's goofy in some parts, but it doesn't take me out of the film. I think it enhances it.
Yeah, and I think it does for the most part. It does kind of, I think it does work for the most part, for sure. The mixture of action comedy, and I enjoy the mixture of action and comedy. And I think you're right. I think that Arnie is a much more natural comedian and I think that with even in his films that are quasi kind of serious or whatever, often you get like his stock of one-liners and stuff like that. And he's much more comfortable being in a slightly goofy mode than he is in a purely kind of dramatic mode. Because like often when I guess like on the flip side, Arnie's weakness is if he's trying to do something that is emotional, he's trying to emote in some way and he's trying to be serious, often he can come off as just a bit wooden when he's doing that.
That's fair. Wait, hold on.
So like, love it, but yeah, I think that's maybe one of his weaknesses.
All right. I don't. You kind of your video started stuttering there for a bit, and then your mic changed. I don't know if that.
I'll just pause it for a second. And then dive into the film. Okay.
Yes.
So, True Lies. So I will just dive into the film. In fact, before we dive into the film, when we went through the plot kind of beat by beat, like we did when we were doing the actor seasons, there was really no need for the plot synopsis. Sometimes, more recently, we kind of jump around. So I probably should give a little bit of a plot synopsis. So basically, Arnie plays a secret agent called Harry Tasker, and he is leading a double life. His wife and child do not know he is a secret agent. They think he is a computer salesman. And there's kind of two main strands of the story. The first strand is that as a secret agent, Harry is on the tail of these major terrorists. And at first, the kind of first act of the movie, he's trying to figure out who the major terrorist that he's on the tail of is, like, the identity of the leader of this group, because he's following the money and tracking down these different people. And then he finds out, and then it's about trying to capture that guy. And then the second main strand of the movie is basically his wife, Helen, is kind of about to have an affair with this guy called Simon, who is doing the reverse of Harry, where he is pretending to be a secret agent, but he's actually a used car salesman. Mm-hmm. And then shenanigans ensue. And that's kind of all your plot that you need for this movie. So now we can dive into the beginning of the movie. And
if you want, if I can jump in, if you do want a full breakdown of the synopsis of the movie, our pals at the Last of the Action Heroes podcast network, from 6 Degrees of Schwarzenegger, did a 5-part breakdown of True Lies. It's fantastic. All their breakdowns are, and just go check them out. A little shout out to those guys. 6 Degrees of Schwarzenegger.
Yes, absolutely. People, anybody who's listening to this should check out all the other podcasts on the Last of the Action Hero Network. And yes. We're not going to dive quite do quite the same deep dive into this film as they are. So we doff our caps to them.
Yes, absolutely.
and their commitment. We just glide past each film in kind of under 2 hours, mainly under 2 hours for the most part. So yes, it's not quite the same level, not quite the same depth. But right. If you want more True Lies, if you want even more depth, like maybe listen to this episode and then dive into their episodes. Their little mini series on this film for sure. Yeah, absolutely. So diving into the plot now, the start of the plot. We'll first tackle the kind of opening mission of the movie, which is very. I do feel like they kind of missed a trick slightly, because this opening kind of mansion scene. It's very Bond, of course. Like a lot of this movie is kind of. It's both a kind of spy movie and a kind of satire on spy movies. So it's kind of works as both a straight spy movie and a kind of parody of it at the same time. But
this had some Mission Impossible vibes too in the beginning.
Yes, it did. It did have Mission Impossible vibes too. Yeah, I think it's not just kind of working off Bond. I think you're right. I think it is working off Mission Impossible as well. Yeah, for sure.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
No. So I was the only thing I was going to say about this opening mansion mission. If they were going to do it in true Bond style, they should have had it. They should have had this scene and then do the opening credits. But maybe it would have been a little bit too long for a cold open. So yes. What did you think of this opening mansion scene that we get as Harry Tasker, Arnie's character, dives into gets into the mansion through a very elaborate way, kind of popping up under the ice, in his scuba suit, and then underneath his scuba suit, just an immaculately pressed suit. Amazing.
I am a big fan of opening a movie in the middle of a mission.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where, all the planning and all that stuff has already taken place. Maybe there's a prequel movie somewhere of just the planning of this specific mission. You know what I mean? But I'm a big fan of this. Just jumping right in. It kind of like it sets the tone right off the bat of how the rest of the movie is going to go. You got, Arnold doing the dirty work. You got Tom Arnold and the, I don't know, the other curly haired guy.
His character name is Faisal. And we should point out that Faisal is played by Grant Heslov, who is an Academy Award winning producer. Because he has a production company with George Clooney, and he was also one of the producers of Argo, which is the one he won the Academy Award for. So,
there you go.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, but they're in the van. They're doing their eye in the sky thing while Harry's doing the dirty work, and it's everybody's role is laid out right off the bat, and it's there's the mixture comedy. You got your action. You got the pretty lady, and Tia Carrera right off the bat. It's just it's good, man. It's a good open.
Yeah, for sure. And I think again, as we were talking about the kind of comedy, I think it plays to Arnie's strengths, and I think there's a number of kind of humorous moments in it, particularly when Tom Arnold's character Gib is kind of telling him off when he's doing the tango, and then I think the funniest moment is when when he's trying to escape and one of the guards asks him for his invite, and he says, here's my invite, and then just everything explodes after that.
Yeah.
And I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, that's a classic action trope. You press the button and everything blows up behind you as you're walking away. I love it.
Yeah. I think that's one of those things that you learn about in action movies, I guess, that just everything and anything can explode, even things that doesn't make any logical sense for them to explode.
Right, yeah. But the explosions look cool, right?
Yeah, no, that's why we have them. Yes.
And you could do a lot worse in the seductress category than Tia Carrera. She is choice in this film.
She is indeed. She had a really kind of cool run in the early 90s between the two Wayne's World films, and this was kind of these kind of years was kind of the peak of her career. It kind of not that her career fell apart after this. She still kept on doing things, but I don't think she was ever kind of this big again.
No, and I think Wayne's World was earlier than this, right? Wayne's World was 92?
Yeah. Wait, yes, it was. It was 92. So I think the first Wayne's World was 92, and then the second Wayne's World I think was the same year as this, 94. So 94, a big year for Tia Carrera.
Yeah, that's a good couple of years right there.
Yeah, for sure. And
so
I think
after the
I do. One of the funny things about this movie, and I'm sure they didn't think about this at the time because the technology did not exist. But when he's trying to escape, there's lots of guards shooting at him, and he is escaping through the woods, and he's running down a hill through the woods. And I can see why, I think when we originally saw this in cinemas or on video or whatever, this scene probably wasn't that funny because it's just like an action scene. So it's just exciting. But it becomes funny because it's been remastered in HD where you have very, very clear shots of Arnie's stunt double throughout this movie. The amount of... I was surprised, but I was like, why didn't they hide these better? But then I was like, oh, they just weren't thinking about it because it obviously didn't come up before it was remastered.
Right. Right. Yeah. They also don't think that, a couple of knuckleheads are going to be podcasting.
Oh yeah, no.
In such scrutinizing detail either,
To be fair, sometimes people, because I'm not one of those people, there's lots of those kind of YouTube channels like Cinema Sins and all these kind of Hollywood errors and stuff like that. And sometimes I watch those videos and I'm like, yeah, I didn't notice that. I don't care. But it was just that some of the stunt double shots in this film are so egregious. Where Whereas, particularly in this scene where he's running down the hill, and then later, when he's riding the horse, there's some instances when he's riding the horse where you actually almost get like a full facial shot of the stunt double.
Right.
And I was like, wow, that's
yeah. I remember one on the horse specifically when he's going through the hotel where it's very obviously not him. It's hard to find, a direct carbon copy of Arnold too, with his massive size. Yeah. You could get close, but very hard to carbon copy him.
No, it is absolutely. I was wondering, kind of like, coming back to the film, like, how much did you enjoy like the kind of banter between Arnie and Tom Arnold? Because like I have to admit, I'm not like a massive like Tom Arnold fan. Like, and I find him way less irritating here than I do in, like, for example, Exit Wounds. Quite annoying. But like, yeah, I guess like I've just never been really a fan. But I didn't mind him here, but like I still don't love him. Like, are you like more enamored by the charms of Tom Arnold?
It's funny that you put it that way too, because even in interviews, like I think he's annoying. Yeah. he's way too over the top, and I used to like be a lukewarm fan of Roseanne, and I hated when he was on screen. Like, he just annoyed me, like you said. But in this, I don't know, maybe it's like because him and Arnold had really, really good chemistry together. Yeah. So maybe like them together, them bouncing off each other, like made Tom Arnold less irritating than he normally would be. I don't know.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Because I do feel, because like rewatching this, I assumed I was going to be annoyed with Tom Arnold because like generally I don't like him, and generally I find him a kind of annoying comedic presence. But rewatching it, I was like, I guess, like, and again, like you say, as much as there's some comedians that I like in a very exaggerated mode because he's like so over the top and stuff, that's part of what makes him annoying. But I do feel like he's slightly dialed down here, as opposed to like what he is in like other movies or like TV shows or stuff like that.
I feel like the stuff that he's in, he's trying to, steal the show. He's trying to be the, what's that thing when background actors are trying to get focus on the camera? You know what I mean? Like he seems to be like that guy, but there's no way you're going to upstage Arnold. So maybe he got that, he understood it. So he's kind of just letting Arnold do his thing and just bouncing off him. I don't know. It worked. Or Cameron. It could be James Cameron knows how to handle a guy like Tom Arnold.
I guess so. And maybe like he just felt very grateful because like apparently, according to the IMDb trivia, like James Cameron really liked the chemistry between Arnold and between Arnie and Tom Arnold. And when 20th Century Fox were like pretty lukewarm on him casting him, James Cameron actually threatened to move the picture to another studio, which is quite a big move for Tom Arnold. Gotta say, like, it's quite a swing. But it paid off.
I read that even Tom Arnold didn't expect to get such a big role, and he asked, for a smaller role just to be in the film, not knowing that James Cameron was fighting for him to be, to be Gib, the part that he plays. And you're right. He was eternally grateful to James Cameron for going to bat for him like that. So yeah, maybe it was Cameron that he decided to not go over the top like he normally would.
Yeah, I think that must be the case, or it's quite probable. Sure, I don't know, but like, I certainly think this opening scene is a great way of setting the table for the movie and a great way of showing like kind of what action we can expect throughout this film. And I have to say, as much as James Cameron has flaws as a filmmaker, usually down to kind of his writing and plotting and stuff like that, can be basic, and some of his dialogue can be a bit clunky and stuff like that. As a technical filmmaker, he is one of the best. Just
Yeah, yeah.
as a visual filmmaker shooting action scenes, there's few better than him, I have to say.
Yeah, he is right up there with Michael Bay and some of the great action directors of the era. Um, but he, if I'm not mistaken, he fired the team that he hired initially to write the film because he didn't like because he hired a team of comedy writers or a duo of comedy writers, and he didn't like what they put in, so he fired them and wrote the script himself with all the comedy bits in, which doesn't seem clunky. It doesn't seem like the garbage shit that he wrote for Titanic.
Yeah, that's
which surprised me. Even the comedy bits, like it takes a good actor to deliver dialogue, but I mean, he wrote the jokes.
He did indeed. I wonder how many of the jokes. So what I didn't realize about this movie until looking into the background of it, I was totally unaware that this is a very loose remake of a French film that came out in 1991 called La Totale, which the English translation for that is The Jackpot, which has the same basic plot, the thing to do with the relationship between Harry and Helen and Simon. But I don't know how much it is related in other ways. I'm assuming because it's a French film on a much smaller budget, most of the action we get doesn't happen in that film. I'm assuming that it more leans on like the comedy plot that we get mostly in the second act.
Okay.
But I don't know because I've not seen that movie. Maybe I should have seen the movie just to compare
before you comment on it.
But I don't know. Yeah. So I just said, like maybe I should have been better prepared for this episode and watched this obscure French film that nobody listening is going to be like. What? I won't say nobody listening. I'm sure there's somebody listening right now going like, I knew it. I've seen it. Like,
Yeah. Oh yeah. You always got one that's screaming at their radio right now, calling us losers.
I'm going to write them an email, all 90s action all the time, thinking they know shit. They don't know shit.
Oh, beautiful. But isn't speaking of Helen, the next scene is when we get introduced to Helen, right? Where Harry comes home from his business trip.
Right. Yes.
And we learn about the ruse.
Yes. So, like, apparently this is a well-oiled already. Again, like you said, there's a lot that's obviously already happened. So, Gib and Harry are kind of like a well-oiled partnership, and Gib has even got like a snow globe thing for the daughter, and all the kind of thing to make it look like he's just been on a kind of normal business trip and not on a super secret spy mission. Yeah,
and that, which we'll get to it, but it leads to the issue between Harry and his wife Helen. Is she just assumes he's this boring computer salesman that has no spice in his life.
Yeah, right.
He goes on these business trips. He comes home with a snow globe for his daughter, and that's all she knows about him.
Yeah. And I do feel like this seems like a very 90s thing. Like, we see some of the family dynamics, and like, obviously Harry is very invested in his job and doesn't realize kind of what's going on in his home life. And there's even a scene where Helen is like, oh, this thing needed fixed. It was like very expensive or whatever. And he's like, yeah, whatever. And she's like, yeah, I got a discount because like I slept with a salesman or the repair guy or whatever. And he's like, oh, good, honey. Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
And so we kind of see this dynamic. And I feel like this is like a very 90s thing. Like there's so many movies, either like these kind of movies, but also like a lot of comedies from the 90s that are about kind of absent husbands or fathers who over the course of the movie become better husbands stroke fathers. Like that seems to be
a
lot of 90s cinema seems to be about that.
Like a character arc that starts, where it's a husband that's lacking that ends up being like the most romantic, lustful, sexual guy towards the end. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is funny too, because she thinks he's this boring guy, but he's like the manliest man you could possibly encounter, in reality. Did it say, was there any inkling on how long he's been working as a spy? I don't remember.
Yes, there is. Much later in the film, during the interrogation scene, Helen asks him when he's under the truth serum, how long have you been a spy? And he says 17 years, and they've been married 15 years. So that is established.
Right.
So
Okay.
he's been a spy their entire life.
So that is a long time to keep up this elaborate lie.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. So, and also I was thinking, like, because like that confused me as well, because he said, oh, he's been a spy for 17 years, and then I was trying to work out, like, because when this movie was filmed, Jamie Lee Curtis would be about 36, and Arnie would have been about 47. And then I was like,
Okay.
Is Arnie supposed to be the same age as her? So he was recruited when he was 21? Or did he suddenly get recruited when he was 30, which seems
30?
more
Yeah.
confusing?
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. That's a little late in life to start your career as like a James Bond type spy, huh?
Yeah. So I was like, so my guess was that he is supposed to be the same age as Jamie Lee Curtis in this filmic universe, and that means he was recruited when he was 21, kind of straight out of college or whatever.
Okay. Yeah, that makes. We'll go with that. We'll retcon that. That makes more sense.
Or oh no, hang on. If she's 36, no, that doesn't make sense. No, he'd been like 19.
That'd be 19.
He'd
Yeah.
be 19. That'd be a bit young, wouldn't it? Also,
Let's
he's
say
either
they're both
19
playing,
or
like-
30. Oh, that's kind of weird.
She's 36. Let's say he's 40. He's a few years older than her.
Okay.
That's all right. We'll give him
So
that.
he's not fully de-aging himself down like 11 years. Like maybe he's a couple years older.
Yeah,
So
let's just say
he's-
7. Sure.
Yeah,
All right.
That's fine. So he's still recruited
Fair
at
enough.
21, and he's now like 38, and he's a couple years older. Then it's fine.
Perfect. We did it.
We cracked it. I'm sure the listeners are like, yeah, we really needed to get the math on that. Like of all the details of this movie that I really wanted to know about,
Yeah.
that's the one, man.
Well, a couple of clicks of that 30-second ahead button, and they're past that conversation.
They're fine. So yes, I also forgot that when we're being introduced to the family, that the daughter is played by Eliza Dushku, which I was like, oh, I had totally forgotten that. Have you seen this movie enough that you were like, oh no, I remember this, or was that a surprise to you too?
It was a surprise. Not that I don't know who I would have gotten it confused with, because Arnold has played Alyssa Milano played his young daughter, and in other films, like I know Kristen Stewart played a young girl as Jodie Foster's daughter in Panic Room. So like all those. Oh, and Face Off, the girl that played John Travolta's daughter. So all those young girls playing badasses' daughters kind of all like looked the same to me at that period of time.
Yeah.
So I wasn't surprised when I went back and I realized it was Eliza Dushku, but it wasn't like on the forefront of my mind, either.
I guess so, like, because like they're not. I mean, and they're not essential characters, in the movie. Like the only real reason they're in the movie as a plot device, rather than as like a character that you're like, oh, I really care about this character.
Yeah, they need to kidnap somebody, so it's the hero's daughter. Why not?
Somebody needs to be kidnapped at some point. So
yeah, and it makes the most sense that it's the main character's daughter.
Yeah, because that's the most kind of perilous thing for the audience, 'cause
Yeah,
the audience is supposed to invest in that more than just like some other person.
Right, and it's it makes the main character do desperate things that he might not normally do, like steal a Harrier jet.
Indeed,
we'll get there.
Well, we will indeed get there. But I think like. Yeah, so the next few kind of scenes we're just establishing the lives of like Harry and Helen, and we see like Harry at the headquarters, where for some reason Harry's boss is Charlton Heston being Nick Fury. Don't know why that is, but like, yeah, that's I that threw me for some reason. I was like, it's like, why did they style him like that? They're just kind of taking in from everything, you know. It's Mission Impossible, Bond, bit of Marvel, you know. Like,
I was more shocked at the fact that it was Charlton Heston in this like small cameo role than than anything else. But
so it's, and also that's I now can't remember which one he's in, but that's our second Wayne's World connection for the day as well, because he has like a really small cameo in, I think, the second Wayne's World. So like, that's random also.
Yeah, imagine those two films being connected somehow.
I have to say to the audience, there's no other Wayne's World connections in this movie. Dana Carvey doesn't pop up in a cameo or something, you know. As fun as that might be,
or Chris Farley as a security guard somewhere, you know, that would be great.
That would have been awesome if he was like one of the mall security guards with a horse, you know, and stuff. Very great. So we're just kind of bouncing back and forward, and like, we're establishing that Helen just thinks he's like this boring sales guy, and says to her friend that she just listens to his day if she wants to get to sleep and stuff like that, because like it's so dull. And then of course we see what's actually happening in Harry's life, and he's doing all this top secret stuff.
It's a nice little duality they got going, you know.
Yeah.
Played well,
for sure. And I think like everybody plays off each other quite well, like, because as much as we were talking about Arnie's chemistry with Tom Arnold, I think Arnie's got like good chemistry with most people in this movie. Like, because he's got good chemistry with Tom Arnold. I think like he's got great chemistry with Jamie Lee Curtis. I think the kind of flirty banter between him and Tia Carrere is really good. So I think like, how did you feel about that? I think that his chemistry is pretty good with most people in this film.
I agree, and I think that's the case for a lot of his films, because by all accounts, he is just a pleasure to work with. He is just like the nicest guy, the kindest guy, the most understanding guy to have on set. You know, and if I may make a comparison to Stallone again, he was an asshole to work with, apparently, especially back in this time when his ego was too big for the room and he had to be the guy, you know what I mean? And he was very difficult to work with from what I understand. But Arnold never forgot how his modest roots from where he started, and like he treated his co-stars, he treated the crew like people, you know what I mean? And from all accounts that I've heard, he was a pleasure to work with. Even like he was willing to give Jamie Lee Curtis shared top billing on this movie. You know, it wasn't like Arnold Schwarzenegger True Lies starring Jamie Lee Curtis or featuring Jamie Lee Curtis. It was like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jamie Lee Curtis at the top, True Lies underneath. Like they were both like double billed, and that was his choice. Like James Cameron was like, would you mind like sharing the billing with Jamie Lee Curtis? And he was like, absolutely not. Like, you know, very nice of him to do that.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. And like from what I've heard him say, and from what I've heard from other people, like he's always been very much about kind of a community. Like he's always had like a community around him, whether that's been from like his early bodybuilding days and the kind of his gym buddies that he had, or going into movies and the cast and crew and stuff like that. And he's always been very kind of community minded like that. So and not just necessarily just seeing himself as like I'm number one. I mean, obviously,
right.
Obviously, like everybody, people are complicated, and he has his downside as like the I guess he wasn't nice to everybody. That I can't remember the name of that bodybuilding documentary, but like but he's kind of pumping iron. He's pretty mean to Lou Ferrigno. He's kind
of he trolls Lou Ferrigno throughout that whole film, and it's like when he's in competition mode, he's he pulls out all the stops, and he abused poor Lou Ferrigno in that.
Yeah, and like I guess like it makes it seem worse in that movie as well, in that documentary, because Lou Ferrigno just seems like the sweetest guy.
Yeah,
he wasn't
very
like,
humble.
Yeah, he wasn't equally into the psychological warfare. It was just Ferrigno was just like, I don't know what's happening.
Yeah, he's just happy to be there, and he just wants to compete.
Yeah.
And Lou, I mean, Lou's gone on to have quite the career himself, and he's maintained his build too. Like Arnold has gone down, throughout the years. Obviously, that comes with age, but Lou, Lou's maintained his size.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess like Arnie started to slim down a little bit, after his heart attack and stuff like that. He wasn't quite like pre-heart attack and post.
Right.
Quite body's kind of
and
quite different.
Now he's in his 70s too, so.
That is true. I mean, like he's getting on in years. He's like 76 now. So like, so you can't expect somebody of that age to look the same as they did. Even now, even then, because like even then, he wasn't like a young guy when he was in True Lies. You know what I mean? He was like 47 years old, which is like not old, but like at the same time, it's not the peak of your physical prime either.
Yeah. Yeah, no, he was really rocking and rolling for a long time. He maintained for, a lot longer than, a lot of other guys. I mean, there might have been some artificial help that way, but I'm not casting dispersions on anybody or accusing anybody of anything. Just,
Yes, no, I think we can definitely say there was artificial help. But then that is like, if you look at any of these kind of insanely built kind of bodybuilders, or like it was the same with wrestling. Wrestlers in the 80s, everybody steroids it was all awash with steroids. Everybody was on some form of juice.
Right, and with the wrestlers, it's taking its toll. Where guys are dropping dead. Of heart attacks in their 30s and 40s. Like that's not natural. That doesn't happen.
No. I think like thankfully, things have got much better in wrestling. There's less, way less of that kind of performance enhancing drugs, and like there's way less deaths. There was like a massive amount of deaths in wrestling between about 99 and like up until about 2007 with the Benoit murders, and then things got a lot better post the Benoit thing.
What a crazy time.
That was a wild and interesting time in wrestling.
For sure.
For sure. But
we digress.
We do digress. We do. I mean, we're giving fun facts for people who might not be aware of. Like, I usually talk about less about wrestling when my co-host Craig is here, because he has no interest in it. And then why do you keep going on these tangents into wrestling? It's just like it just comes up.
Yeah, right.
Action movies, wrestling, they're fairly close together.
Yeah, they go hand in hand, like peanut butter and jelly.
Exactly. But digressing back towards the film, I guess like the next big thing that we have is we kind of discover who our main terrorist is. Our main terrorist is called Salim. He is played by British actor Art Malik, because all Middle Eastern terrorists in the 80s and 90s action movies generally were played by British actors for reasons unknown. And then we find out him, and then basically Salim is on Harry's case, and we have a series of action sequences, really great action sequences, as Salim tries to track him down. So the first action sequence, before we get to the horse chase, which is really fun, is a very big bathroom fight that might have been an influence on the much later Mission Impossible Fallout. I feel like those guys might have watched this movie.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. I was thinking Terminator 3 too,
Yeah, that's
Terminator
fair.
3 also. There's a big,
Yeah.
I don't know, what is it with fights in the bathrooms? It's crazy. We're like the toilets getting broken off the wall, the sinks getting broken off the wall, water spraying everywhere.
I think it's
Bathroom
that.
fights are.
I think it's that. I think it's the aesthetic look of it. I think like just the kind of classic thing of somebody like picking somebody up and smashing their face off a sink, and the sink like just crumbling,
Yeah.
and then there's water spraying everywhere, like you say. Like just the look of it, I think there's a kind of fun look to it. So like I think that's why maybe they go back to that well.
It's very claustrophobic to me when I
Yeah.
see fights in the bathroom, because bathrooms aren't typically large enough for that kind of thing, you know?
Yeah, that's true. But they tend to be in like large hotel lobbies,
Of
or whatever,
course.
or like
Yeah.
or like concert halls where like there's like a really large, many like a dozen cubicles or whatever.
Yeah.
It's
Bathrooms that I've never been in my life.
yeah, no, not at all. 5-star hotels and concerts.
Right.
And I think they do it well. Again, talking about that mixture of action and comedy. How did you like that mixture again? Because we also, in the comedy side of things, there is a guy who is obviously doing his business in one of the cubicles, and we get kind of constant kind of cutaway shots to him and his kind of bemusement at this fist fight that turns into a shootout. At a certain point you think he would have run out the bathroom, but I get it for comedic effect.
Or you just hunkered down and wait for it to be over.
Yeah, just be like, it's got to pass at some stage.
Yeah.
Come on.
No, that's kind of like a trope in some ways too, where the innocent guy just minding his own business while hell is occurring around him. But yeah, I mean, I liked it. It wasn't well, it didn't bother me anyway, here or there.
Yeah. So, kind of talking about the tone of the movie and how kind of things change in the movie. I was wondering how you felt about the transformation of Salim, the head terrorist. Now, I feel like in this opening act, in this fight, and when we first see him, when we first kind of introduced to him, he is kind of we don't necessarily know that he's the leader of the terrorist group, and then we get to find out as he has this conversation and kind of slaps around Tia Carrera's character, because again, that seemed to be something that we did in these movies a lot, that like to prove that this guy is evil, we have to have him slapping around a woman for some reason. And then, but he seems like quite sinister in this opening section. And I guess the question I was going to ask was, what do you think about his character evolution? Because I think he is two different characters in this opening section of the movie and this in the later section of the movie, where he's played way more comedic than he is when he's first introduced.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because I was thinking of how, like, in a comedy movie, you don't want your villain to be too serious, too regimented, too military, because in a comedy movie, you want your villain to be kind of like a bumbling buffoon. You know what I mean? I mean, like you said, later on in the movie, like with the video, when the videotape like battery goes dead when he's doing his big grand speech, that, like, I wish there was more of that throughout. You know what I mean? Like he's got to be more like the Osama bin Laden character in South Park. Like the coyote to the road. Was it South Park? Yeah. The coyote to the roadrunner, who's just getting taken advantage of, and kind of like a buffoon.
Yeah. So like that's kind of what I felt as well. That like because I think it's quite jarring that he seems like a proper sinister action movie villain when he's first introduced, and we have this fight, and then we get this horse chase and all that kind of stuff. But then when he comes back into the movie, he seems like a genuine buffoon, and he seems almost like a villain from Hot Shots or something. Hot Shots Part 2, something like that. And he's doing all these kind of comedic reaction shot faces and all this kind of stuff. And if he was like that throughout the film, wouldn't bother me at all, because this is an action comedy. We get the register of the film. It just feels a little bit jarring that he seems to go from this one mode when he's first introduced to this completely different mode when we get returned to him kind of in the third act.
It's almost like it takes you out of the film in reverse. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Usually if you have a serious movie, the comedy bits take you out of that. Now you have like all these comedy bits, and then this guy is just like way too serious.
Mm-hmm.
It's the tone doesn't match. You're right in the first part. Interesting though.
It is interesting, and I think like this movie kind of plays with that a lot because there's a lot of tonal shifts throughout the movie, and there's a lot of kind of like just how seriously are we taking things? We're not quite sure, but like it goes back and forth, and it hits the right notes most of the time, but every so often you'll just get the odd bum note where you're like,
yeah, like.
Not sure about that, you know.
Like when a piano hits the wrong note and you're kind of like, hey, that something doesn't match up here. It just feels wrong in just like that split moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't think I've ever really consciously noticed that before, but I have the feeling of it. It makes sense when you just described it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think like going back to something better in the movie, we're now kind of up to the horse chase, which as we said, you know, it becomes a little bit goofy because we get these all these shots of the stunt double's face. But like overall though, it is both an exciting action set piece and also like a funny action set piece as well, because like there's all the shenanigans of trying to get the horse in the lift and the bike in the lift, and you know the kind of, and all this kind of stuff. And I think like I honestly think it's one of the best kind of set pieces in the film.
Yeah, it's really great because just even Arnold, you know, every time he breaks something or like has to excuse himself, he's just like, I'm sorry, you know, just apologizing. You know, it's just funny. Like it's funny.
It is pretty hilarious because he's a very polite spy. You know, he's not like James Bond who just barrels through things, doesn't give a shit. He's very kind of like, oh well, you know, like I'm just doing my job, you know. Like
he must have said I'm sorry like 10 times in just that one scene. He's just, you know, like you said, it's just a polite guy where he doesn't need to be. He's going after a terrorist. He's doing his job in an unconventional way, but he's trying to do his bit.
And that's another thing as well. Like, as much as I previously said that I often find Tom Arnold quite annoying, I did like his reaction when he's in the van and like Arnie says like, oh, you know, kind of hurry up because my horse is getting tired. And he just goes, horse?
Yeah.
And I was like, he did nail that one. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like a throwaway thing, you know, he didn't overdo it.
No.
But yeah, but you got like the comedy, like him, you know, the horse excusing himself into the elevator, you know, with other people and calmly riding up. And then once the doors open, boom, it's back to the action. You know what I mean? It's like it really bounces back and forth from action to comedy.
Yeah. And even to the last moment where Salim does like a motorbike jump into a swimming pool in the next building, I'm pretty sure would have killed him. But yeah, we'll go past that.
You know, physics don't matter in action films.
No. I know that. I'm just joking around. But then like Arnie tries to do the shame jump with his horse, and the horse is like, that's not happening. So again, you know, we get this Sterling motorbike jump, and then we get the horse thing, which again is quite funny. And then Arnie's kind of hanging from the building and has to plead with the horse to pull him back up, which I thought was really fun.
Yeah. And was that the stunt where Arnold almost perished?
It is, because like the stuff on the horse, part of it he did, part of his stunt double did, as we saw. And then yes, that is the stunt that like nearly could have killed him, because apparently, obviously, they weren't on the edge of a skyscraper, but there was like a 30-foot drop on the other side of where they were with the horse. And apparently his stunt double realized that the horse had kind of bolted and just managed to capture the horse at the right time before right on the edge before it went off the edge, and Arnie and Horse fell 30 feet to
Crazy.
both of them being perished, which is which is wild.
That's and from what I read, it's like Arnold has the utmost love and respect for stuntmen, and this is one of the origins of that, because stuntmen literally saved his life.
Yeah, no, it's pretty crazy, and thankfully no harm was done. I have to say, like, this does remind me. I have to tell this story because, like, I'm living in Wellington, but I'm originally from Edinburgh, and there was one time Arnold was doing one of those kind of black tie events, like those charity dinners where you get to, like, Q&A and you get to meet him and stuff like that. I didn't go because tickets were like £1,500 or so, like what, £1,500 or something like that.
Yeah,
something crazy. But he was in Edinburgh. Everybody knew he was in Edinburgh. It was quite exciting. And there was apparently he nearly died in Edinburgh, and he nearly died because there is a road called Lothian Road that is a road that's quite steep. It's like goes up a hill. And he was doing his morning cycle, and he obviously forgot he was in the UK, and so was going up the road the wrong side of the road, and he nearly got hit. He nearly got hit by a bus. And this was in the local newspaper that Arnie nearly hit by a bus. I was like, oh, for fuck's sake, man. That would have been like a terrible way to go, like Arnold killed by Edinburgh bus, A
badass like him, right? It couldn't have been in a big action stunt, just riding his bike, getting hit by a bus. It's terrible.
Oh, yeah.
Well, thankfully,
the man is still with us, and everything is okay. And it was just,
and there was no stuntman to save him in Edinburgh, was there?
No, there was no stuntman riding beside him, like, oh fuck, Arnold.
Oh, fantastic.
There. I'm sure he'll always remember which side of the road the UK uses now.
Yeah, it only takes once, right?
Yeah, for sure. So, I guess now the horse race and all that is kind of finished. We kind of switch gears because as we go into the second act, we kind of forget about Salim for about 40 minutes, and over the course of this 40-ish minutes, we really delve into the plot of, like, Helen and Simon and Harry finding out about it. And I find this film is, like, not crazy long compared to what we get now, but, like, is the longest film we've ever covered on the podcast at 2 hours and 20 minutes. Which is like, the only other film that kind of come close to it is Backdraft, which is a surprisingly 138 minutes. Wow. Yeah, no, I forgot. I've watched Backdraft a number of times and always forget how long it is.
Well, in a movie like Backdraft, a movie like this, they're long, they're over 2 hours, but it doesn't feel that way, right? Like, this is very digestible.
Oh, it absolutely is. But
I would agree that Backdraft is the same.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I think that's why you forget that it's as long as it is, because I always think of it as being like this, like, 100-minute movie or something like that. But then, like, it's 138 minutes.
Listen, we've watched 90-minute Stallone movies that felt like 3 hours, right? So, yeah, I get it from the other angle too. But
absolutely. I recently was on another podcast talking about a Steven Seagal film called Attack Force, which is 90 minutes and lasted for days.
Yeah, he's another guilty party.
Yeah, for sure. But I would say that particularly I would say it's kind of 40 minutes, but, like, part of that time is, like, the infamous hotel scene that we get. But the kind of there's about half an hour that's really dealing with the kind of Simon plot. And I do feel like this is the worst part of the movie, despite the fact that Bill Paxton is hilarious as Simon. playing just an utter garbage creep. Like he's such a slime ball, but he's so good at playing it. And as much as I think this film slows down, and as much as I kind of don't like this part of the movie because I don't like what it does to Harry's character, because he's such a he turns into like such a kind of jerk in this part of the movie, and I understand he thinks his wife's on an affair and whatever, but like I don't know, like I just find that the character kind of becomes annoying in this section. But I don't know, like you might have a completely different take on it, so like take away.
Well, let's first I want to talk about Paxton, because I watched this movie a ton. I've seen this movie probably a dozen or more times, and when I went to rewatch it recently, I didn't realize how much screen time Bill Paxton actually had in this middle part.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was just like a blink and you miss it cameo, but it's really like he plays a good, solid character who's just like you want to talk about a villain who's a buffoon. Like he's like the over the top guy that's meant to be played over the top.
Sure,
and you don't hate him for it. You're like, this guy's a sleazeball, but that's what he's meant to be. And what you say about Harry in this part, besides using all the government resources to spy on his wife, taxpayer dollars at work there. The part that if you wanted to criticize Harry for is in the end when he takes like pleasure in tormenting Simon, you know what I mean, at the end, where he makes him piss his pants and stuff like that. I mean, that's like, if you want to side eye Arnold's character for that, then yeah, I won't hate you for it, but the scumbag deserved it.
So yeah, as much as I kind of enjoy Bill Paxton's performance as kind of the slimeball Simon character, I think parts of this part of the movie just don't really work for me. Or I think like everybody kind of focuses in on different things. Some people really don't like the fact that, some people want physics to work in action movies or things like that, which doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me that physics don't work. It doesn't bother me that everything explodes. Lots of things don't bother me. One of the things that does kind of bother me in films, and this, obviously this is the kind of thing that happens a lot in romantic comedies, is where we have long sections of movies that could be sorted by like a 5-minute conversation.
Oh yeah.
And I know that we're kind of, draining out the dramatic juice, of this situation, and I kind of get that, but it would have been much better resolved with a conversation. And like the fact, also, like Harry can't be too mad because he's been lying to his wife for 15 years, and the way he was flirting with Tia Carrere suggests he's possibly cheated on her before. So like, so I don't feel like he has the moral high ground here, to be honest.
Right.
And also, I do think that like this part of the movie plays to its kind of plays to the film's kind of worst sexist impulses, because there's a lot of lines in it that kind of the kind of bitches be crazy type, like kind of that kind of mode of dialogue, which I kind of find a bit cringy. And you were saying about things you can side-eye Harry for. He extraordinary renditions his wife and then interrogates her.
Yeah, let's broaden that brush a little bit. Yeah, instead of just mocking and humiliating Simon, he does kind of pimp out his wife a little bit. And then gaslights the shit out of her by putting her under the microscope.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, okay. If you wanna get like deep into the whole Harry's a spy going after these terrorists, that to me, after seeing this movie so many times, is almost the subplot to what the real story is, which is repairing Harry and Helen's marriage, right? So in order to repair the marriage, you have to establish what's wrong with it.
Yep.
And obviously Harry's an unattentive wife. Helen's feeling ignored, so she goes. She's not all in on the affair. She's kind of just intrigued and like dipping her toe in the water. You know what I mean? To see if there's excitement out there, right? If there's and Simon somehow picks up on the fact that she's a starving housewife and takes advantage of it, complete with his porn stash and the wig and everything. Like he really plays a good creep.
He really, Bill Paxton really went all in this role. To be honest,
He did
way more than he needed to be.
I love every second of it. He's way over the top with his stupid laugh and his game and the smolder, the eye smolder that he does. You know, it's hilarious. It is.
It is hilarious, and I do think it's hilarious how much of an idiot he is. Where he's like, he's showing Arnie the car, and trying to sell him the car, and then he's talking about women, and it's like, oh, you've got to have a play, you've got to have an angle, and then like Arnie's like, oh, what's your angle? And he's like, well, I can't possibly tell. Cut to the next scene, he's definitely telling, because he's such a buffoon. The
problem with these women, he's like knee deep into his game, his play. But I love it. I love the how confident he is in it, and like right up to the fantasy where Arnold elbows him in the face, like breaks his nose and everything. Like that's and then cut to him like doing his goofy laugh. Like it's it's great. It's great. Paxton is just brilliant in this role.
Yeah. I mean, like, Paxton was great, and like, it's sad that we no longer have him around, to be in more of these movies.
Yeah,
like,
lost too soon.
He definitely was, and like, it seems like he had like a great sense of humor as well, because like you don't often associate him with comedy, but he's great here. And then I don't know if you saw it, but there's like a horror comedy movie or a comedy horror called Club Dread, where he plays a character called Coconut Pete, who's like a kind of he's like a kind of piss take of what's that guy called? Guy who does like the kind of Caribbean sounding song, Jimmy Buffett, is that his name?
Oh, like the Margaritaville guy.
Yeah, the Margaritaville guy. He's like a kind of piss take of the Margaritaville guy.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, that was a Broken Lizard film, right?
Yeah, it's a Broken Lizard movie. Yeah.
I missed that one.
It's quite a fun movie. Like if you like slashers, it kind of plays with the tropes of slashers.
Paxton is funny in that way because like he does this brilliantly. From what you say, like he does his part in Club Dread good, and he's almost like silly when he tries to do dramatic, like in Twister. You know what I mean? He's almost like doesn't play those parts as well. Like I don't know, like you don't take him seriously as a dramatic actor almost.
Yeah, sometimes I guess. Like, but then there's other I guess like he's good in like kind of genre stuff, I guess. Like, because he does play a good, like, kind of, villainous kind of character in, like, there's I'm forgetting the name of it now. Near Dark, the Catherine Bigelow vampire movie. Like, that's good in that, and like properly evil in that. So like, I guess like maybe with Twister. Like Twister's like a kind of funny movie because again, that doesn't know how much it wants to be like a kind of actual drama and how much it wants to just be like a cheesy, disaster B movie.
Yeah, like a Sharknado kind of film. Yeah.
So right. So yeah, maybe because like the movie's a little tonally confused, maybe that like didn't help his performance.
He should have done more straight out comedy. Weird Science. He was great in Weird Science.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. This has just become the Bill Paxton appreciation episode.
Everybody should do a Bill Paxton appreciation episode.
Absolutely.
The guy's a treasure.
He is an absolute treasure. So like, yes, I definitely think so. Like, and I do think as much as like I'm really kind of in two minds about that scene that you talked about of like, the kind of things you could have a side eye about Harry. Like the scene that Harry like kind of humiliates him and is like hanging him off the side of a big drop, and is really intimidating him and stuff like that. Part of me is like, this scene is quite ugly and quite mean spirited, but then part of it I do find funny because the way Bill Paxton the monologue that he gives, where he just starts, he just starts being like, "Oh, I'm not a spy. I'm like useless. I'm just like used car salesman. I'm nothing. I have a small dick." You know, like, he just keeps going on and on.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, where they almost like pity him at the end instead of getting really mad at him.
Yeah, they're like, "Oh no!"
But then, like, he caps it off, like at the end, doesn't he? Say, like, "You still want the car?" It's like, like he's right to the end. The guy's he's goofy. Yeah, I have a small dick. Yeah, that's great, man.
Yeah,
and then we're never to see Simon again. Just left there in the desert, by himself on the edge of that cliff.
Yes, I mean we do see Simon again at the very end of the movie.
Oh right, yeah.
Yes,
with the
we get like one last joke.
He's a waiter at the
yes,
right. He's a waiter
at the ambassador's ball or whatever that. Yeah. So I guess like where are we up to in the movie now? Oh yes, I guess we're at the infamous hotel scene where Arnie pimps out his wife.
Well, they employ her. They capture her in this sting operation that was meant to humiliate Simon, but they employ her because she admits to being a bored housewife.
Yep.
Right. So they said, okay, you want some action? You're working for us now, and they sent her to this hotel. Yeah,
absolutely. And just before we get to that, like the interrogator to get this like the full download on the Simon affair and all that. And I think we've been talking kind of back and forth about Tom Arnold's kind of comedic abilities. And I think this is one of the scenes where I do feel like he does overplay it, like where he keeps interjecting and kind of being like,
"Oh yeah,
he just doesn't do it for you anymore," and all this kind of stuff. And I found that a bit annoying. That's kind of the most annoying I felt in the movie.
Yeah, well, Harry's trying to interrogate his wife properly. He keeps jumping in but he's not really oiling your chain anymore, is he? Just let Harry do his business, without interjecting. Yeah. But yes, I would agree with you there.
Yeah, for sure. And I think like this section of the movie coming up and for kind of the last hour of the movie, I guess, I think Jamie Lee Curtis really, really comes into their own. Although I have to say, it's not really explained. I know we do this thing in movies, particularly 80s and 90s movies, where like people who are seen as kind of dowdy or not particularly attractive have glasses, and then they don't have glasses and they're like, wow, fucking hell. They become amazingly more physically attractive. But it's never really explained. It doesn't like she goes to contact lenses. I was like, why does she just not need the glasses anymore? Like,
you think the glasses are a purpose, right?
Yeah. Not like an affectation,
Right. Nowadays, people wear the glasses with the clear lenses just for the look.
Yeah, just for the look, just to make them look intelligent. But I was assuming that she needed glasses. But again, I guess this is a minor point. But
it starts like right when she gets to the hotel, right? She's wearing that dress with the puffy, because she doesn't have a sexy dress, right? She just has this like evening gown that's just got the puffy shoulders and like the really long like lace bottom or whatever. So she gets to the hotel and she realizes she's not going to seduce this guy with this thing. So she rips off the sleeves and she rips off the thing at the bottom, and she puts some water like through her hair and like kind of messes her hair up, and boom, all of a sudden she's like a sex kitten. You know what I mean? But what a transformation. 16-year-old Doug was into it, man.
Yeah. I have to say, like, I mean, absolutely. And obviously the first time I saw this movie, I guess, I don't know when the first time I saw this movie. I mean, it certainly wasn't when it came out, because when it came out, I'd be 9. I would have seen it a few years later. I probably would have seen it on video when I was around 12, 13 or something. So obviously formative experience.
Still, like, yeah. Oh yeah, that's a core memory right there.
You know, so absolutely. But what blew my mind, because obviously I had no kind of idea about people's ages at that age of like 12, 13. What blew my mind was just how the character is played, where this is like, it's kind of played like she's this housewife and she's kind of like getting a bit old and she's kind of past it. Jamie Lee Curtis was 36 when this was filmed. Like, that's wild.
Yeah, that's not I mean, shit, people are having kids at 36 now, you know? It's not not she's not beyond her years, not at all, not in the least.
Not at all.
And she brought it for this role. And I also like too that she didn't just go into that room like she owned the shit, you know what I mean? Like, she was apprehensive, she was shy. Even when she started to dance, she looked a little goofy until, you know, she was like, you know, realized if she wants this story to be believable, if she wants to save her husband or whatever the case was, she really has to go for it.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Oh, she didn't even know Harry was involved at this point. So whatever the case was, but she had to go for it. When that switch turned, man, again, going back to 16-year-old Doug, he felt some things.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It is a very, very steamy sequence, and yes, she really, like you say, she really brings it, and like, but she manages to nail it just right, because like you say, she is a bit awkward to begin with, and then she gets more confident and sexy. But even when she's in like the peak sexy mode, she also adds like that little bit of comedy as well, like, because there's that bit where she's trying to do the pole dancing thing on the 4-poster bed and falls over, and then tries to regroup, you know, and that's hilarious. So like the
best part of that is you see like Arnold is in the background in the shadows. She falls off the bed and he does like a jump, like he's about to jump off the chair and help her because it surprised him. But obviously he's got to stay in character, so he sits back down. She gets up, and there's no problem. But his reaction to her falling was the best part of that.
Apparently, his reaction was real, because apparently she and James Cameron choreographed what was going to happen, but didn't tell Arnie what was going to happen. So apparently that reaction was like a proper reaction, like a real kind of like, oh shit.
But he stopped himself before he like broke.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. That's fantastic. That's
so
funny.
I thought that was like a fun little tidbit that was
that's great.
Little kind of joke that James Cameron and Jamie Lee Curtis kind of played on Arnie there.
And they kept it in the film. That's great.
They kept it in the film, because apparently they did a second take where obviously Arnie at this point knew that this was going to happen, but like because the reaction wasn't, they were going to kind of keep a similar reaction, but the reaction wasn't as good as like the proper real reaction.
They didn't sell it enough.
So they kept the first take. Yeah.
Brilliant.
So I think like after that, the thing that confused me in the kind of next bit coming out was once Arnie gets like Helen, Jamie Lee Curtis character, on the bed and is about to kiss her, like she lamps him with a telephone. But I think, and I know it's dark, so I'm thinking like, oh, when she lamps him with a telephone, maybe she wouldn't realize it's her husband. But like when he comes into the light and she's kicking him, I think she would have realized at that point, and she doesn't.
Yeah, she realizes way too late, and even when she does realize it's him, it takes her a while to ask him, "What are you doing here?"
Yeah.
That doesn't come up for a while.
Yeah, she just seems to think it's like some mad coincidence, because the penny still hasn't dropped about the spy thing. Where
when the bad guys come in and she's like, "No, I'm the spy. I'm the one you're looking for," and he's like, don't believe this tramp. She doesn't know what she's saying. Like there's at no point does she look at him and be like, "Wait a second, what are you doing here?"
I know. And then like you think she would have had more questions about that as well, like, because he keeps saying that, like, drop this prostitute, get it, she's a crazy bitch, don't listen to her and stuff like that. And you think at some point the character would be like, why is he saying that? Why is he playing it cool? Like, why does he?
Right.
Is he, like, is he trying to save me in some way? But that thought process is not at all what happens in the movie. And I get it. It adds to the comedy. I get why they go in the less realistic direction. But it is still quite funny. Like, it's like, the character doesn't seem all that bright at the moment.
And I don't know, like, what she thought would happen. Like, she's the one, like, I'm the spy, I'm the one you're looking for. Like, what does she think, like, the next step is? Like, they're going to kidnap her. She has no knowledge of anything that's going on, or that's supposedly going on, so I don't know what she thinks is going to happen next.
I don't know what her kind of forward thinking is for like an exit plan or anything like that. Kind of like
no contact. She doesn't know who she's like contacting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's not like she has like a code name that she can call up or anything like that. So yeah. I
guess just this one time we'll suspend disbelief and just go along for the ride.
We will, because like, again, we get more kind of like good banter between like Arnie and Jamie Lee Curtis, and also like between Jamie Lee Curtis and Tia Carrera. There's some kind of catty back and forth between them as well that really works quite well.
Yeah, I like it. I like where it goes from here.
Yeah, I like where it goes from here as well, because like I said, there's that kind of half-hour period that I'm less fond of. And then, we get back into the action again, and I think that's kind of what this film does best. And yeah, there's kind of like I guess they're kind of captured, and then we get the kind of interrogation sequence that we kind of mentioned a little bit, where Arnie's like, Harry is under the truth serum.
Oh yeah.
And that's quite a funny, quite kind of funny sequence. But I think my favorite part of that interrogation sequence is the end, where he tells the interrogator exactly how he's going to kill him.
Yeah, he lays it right out for him. And it's funny because the way he does dispatch him is exactly how he said he was going to. But it's funny because, like, you give him a truth serum and he tells you the truth about how he's going to kill you. I guess like that's the comedy in it all.
Yeah, for sure. But I was a little confused by the interrogator, because like this truth serum does seem to make him tell the truth. Mm-hmm. So like the torture seems kind of unnecessary. That seems like he's just doing it for kicks.
Yeah, you would think if you torture him or give him the truth serum. I don't think you need both, No, you're going to get the truth whether you torture him or give him the truth serum. Yeah, so maybe the torture is just like his way of getting his rocks off.
I think so. Like, I think like the interrogator just likes torturing people. But like, yeah. So it's entirely.
He's an interrogator.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess entirely surplus to requirements. But yeah. Like, it's like we've got like this great, the terrorists, like we've got this great truth serum, but like the interrogator that we hired has a real kink for just torture, so we allow him to torture the people as well.
He wouldn't be satisfied in a job well done if he didn't get to inflict a little torture, just a little. It's just to wet the taste buds. That's all.
Yeah. And I guess, as we described, the terrorists have become totally different. They're now no longer sinister. They're completely comedic. They're completely buffoonish, ridiculous. But I do, like you mentioned earlier, I do like the scene where they're filming the kind of big kind of "Down with America" speech, and the battery runs out in the camera, and they have to get a new battery. That is quite a good gag. I did laugh at that.
What's funny is like I really felt that guy's anxiety because he doesn't want to stop. He doesn't want to say, wait a second, the battery ran out. But he kind of like, he's sweating. He's like thinking like, what do I do? So he like slowly lowers the camera until Aziz is like, what are you doing? But it's like you felt that guy's anxiety,
And I do think the guy plays it well, because there is a moment where it seems like Salim's speech is about to end, and there's like a moment of relief in the guy of like, oh fuck, we just made it.
Yeah.
But then he starts the speech up again, and then he's just like, shit.
Oh yeah, that's great.
Oh,
you're almost there. You're almost there.
Almost got to the finish line. No.
Yeah, that was a good bit. That was a good bit.
Yeah. I get what you mean. Like, I think like one of the things I've always thought about this movie is I think reflecting on most of my favorite action movies of the 90s, the 80s and 90s, I think most of them have like a great villain. I love just like a great scenery chewing, villain, of the Hans Gruber type, or whatever.
Sure, yeah.
And I've always felt that this villain is a bit undercooked, but I do understand where you're coming from. That the villain is not supposed to be like the main thing. The main thing is like the marriage and the recovery of the marriage, and like that arc is what the movie is really about, even though there's all this kind of action and explosion and madness surrounding that it is about the relationship. So like the villain is kind of a side point, so he doesn't have to be as impactful as a Hans Gruber or something like that.
Yeah, you look at the heart and soul of what the movie is, and it's Harry Tasker's evolution from like an unattentive husband to, being like right back in the honeymoon stage. Him and his wife are desperately in love again. So that's really like when you focus that, like when that's your focus, like everything else is kind of just, it's the filler, you know what I mean? Including this terrorist subplot, which is it. I mean, it is a big that's where all the action originates from, is his fight against the terrorists, so you need that, but you don't need like a really, badass, like, take over the world kind of, Bond villain.
Yeah, right. He doesn't need to be Blofeld or whatever. Yeah, for sure. I understand that. I almost wonder if the movie would be slightly back. Like, this is still a good movie. Like, when I rated it on Letterboxd, I put it as 4 stars. I've seen the movie a number of times. I like the movie, but I wonder if it almost be better in a slightly different order if we've got Simon earlier, or if we got the terrorist slightly late, or we got Salim slightly later. Because like I think the way the movie opens, you feel like Salim is the point of the movie, not necessarily the marriage.
Right.
But and then you realize further into the film that like it's the other way around, and it's like the evolution of the relationship between Helen and Harry.
Well, I guess think about it this way. I think I called him Aziz before for some reason, but Salim. If you take away the comedy and you make this like a straight badass, like explosions, gunfire, action film, right? And now like his fight against the terrorists is the main plot, and his marriage is secondary. Like, does it still work as is? You know what I mean? Just take away the comedy bits. Make Aziz like a Bond villain. Make Salim a Bond villain, Bond style villain, like murdering people left and right. Kidnaps the daughter, holds a gun to her head, like that kind of bad guy.
Yeah,
I think it still can work as like a straight up action film.
Yeah, I guess so. Like, just to go back to what you were previously saying, the villain's full name is Salim Aboub Aziz. So like his surname is Aziz. So like
okay, I'm sort of right.
You're still sort of right. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay,
No,
good.
I agree with you. I think it still works. I have to say that I think overall, kind of when it comes to like action movies, I think a lot of my favorite action movies are action comedies. So like I do like the comedy. For sure.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, I think often Arnie works best when he's at a slightly kind of goofier tone. like
Mhm.
when he's at a slightly, I'm trying to think of more serious ones. When he's trying to be more serious, like in I don't know, like End of Days, I guess. Like he's trying to be more serious there,
Okay.
or something like that's more of a kind of straight ahead, kind of like pretty humorless action movie, like something like
Predator
yeah,
or
no, Predator's kind of like it's still like got a kind of goofy tone because like it's not a comedy, obviously, but like it's still got the stuff of like like the manly handshake and the
yeah.
goddamn sexual tyrannosaurus and then
Yeah, and
it's still
Shane's
got
jokes.
yeah, it's changed jokes and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
it's still got that kind of goofiness. I think like there's certain ones. I think the one that comes to mind where it's more like kind of straight ahead and pretty humorous is something like Raw Deal, which I like, which is
Okay.
one of the kind of weaker Arnie movies, in my opinion, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, Partly because of it, but I think like that's the kind of register he works in best, where things are larger than life, and are slightly goofy, not necessarily out and out comedic, but just like a bit
Mhm.
heightened and a bit goofy. I think like that's the area he works
That's
best
his
in.
happy place. Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
think so.
All
Yeah.
right. Fair enough. I could see that. I'm wondering if it did go because like you think of I don't know. You think of some of these early films like the from the 80s and stuff, the villains are almost forgettable. It's like secondary to the explosions and everything.
Yeah.
I think like Aziz would still be a memorable villain if you did take away, take out all the action bits. I mean, all the comedy bits. I think like he could have been like a mean enough, a sinister enough villain, to be memorable.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, no, I
Like
do
in
agree with
Commando,
that.
I don't even who's the main villain in Commando.
Oh,
you know.
yeah, so Commando's a weird film because like I actually can't remember the name of the character. I know the name of the actor is Dan Hedaya. And
Yeah.
Dan Hedaya is like the main villain. But
Right.
even like basically Bennett like kind of
Mhm.
like
Oh yeah,
kind of
yeah.
kind
True
of kind
Grit.
of kind of bumps him off before like Arnie
Mhm.
really gets to him, like so essentially Bennett becomes the main villain, even
Yeah.
though
Yeah.
even though throughout the movie he's been kind of the right hand man. So like
Okay.
so I guess like Bennett's kind of the main is like the
Yeah.
memorable villain
He
from that
yeah,
movie.
because he's
The
the main face off.
yes,
Yeah.
he's the main threat.
All right, true.
So
Forget what I just said about about forgettable villains. Like, yeah, yeah.
yeah, I mean, I guess in that sense, the head villain, or who we've assumed to be the head villain in that movie, is relatively forgettable. Even though I think Dan Hedaya is a really good actor, but then
Yeah.
yeah, Bennett is a really memorable villain. I think he
Right.
is he is up there with the kind of top villains in your kind of 80s action movie villain gallery.
And the guy who plays Bennett is more close to Arnold's size, so having like a face off, like a head to head face off, is more believable than if Aziz and Arnold were, and Harry Tasker were going to go hand to hand. That
Yeah,
wouldn't be very believable.
no, that's true. It has to be done differently. It has to be done as a shootout or like in the bathroom sequence or whatever. Because like yeah, like just like a straight up fist fight would just look
Mhm.
ridiculous. I think yeah that wouldn't work very well. Um, yeah,
All right. So
yeah.
it's an interesting discussion.
I
Would
think
this have worked like in just a straight action film?
yeah, but then um
I would like to see if people would be interested in weighing in on this, like what they think of that.
yeah, I would be very interested to see like if people want to like comment or write in or message the podcast or whatever. It'd be very interesting to see like what people's thoughts are. I do think that as a straight movie, I'm not sure that the marriage stuff would work so well. I'm not sure. Like
Mm.
I like because then I think that if you're doing it as a straight movie and you're doing the kind of relationship in a kind of more dramatic mode and not in a kind of comedic mode, then I do think you're playing to like Arnie's weak side, and then I think it would be better
Yeah.
done by
Mhm.
somebody else. Maybe I don't somebody who's got like slightly more acting chops, like a Bruce Willis or something like that. You know, like it's
Right.
you know what I mean?
Yeah, and that aspect might become a little more sad and tragic in a way, and not as, I mean, the comedy of the whole marriage thing is what makes that storyline work.
That's right.
you
Yeah.
know, it would be unfortunate to make that like the sad and tragic part of like an otherwise, you know, bomb ass action film.
That's true. And then like if you were to play it more serious, then you kind of have to play more seriously with like what's happening in the relationship and how
Mhm.
he's
Exactly.
been gaslighting her for all this time, you know, and
Yeah.
like you know what I mean? And then
Yeah.
that could become real, and then you could have like really weird tonal shift of being like, oh, we're exciting and explosions, and then like we're kind of like, oh, we're really bummed out and we're thinking about
Yeah.
the disintegration of a marriage, you know, like and then we're supposed to be excited again, and then we're sad again. And like, you know, like
Yeah,
I
that
think like
might-
the tonal shift would be even worse.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Yeah, some those I don't think maybe action and drama don't mesh as well as action and comedy.
I think you're right. I think
Okay.
like action and drama can, you know, because like action plays at this more elevated kind of level, and
Mhm.
then when you have to bring it down to earth to a more realistic level for the drama, I think that just
Right.
doesn't quite. It kind of makes it feel kind of awkward and weird.
Okay, interesting. Well, good discussion.
Yeah,
We'll see if anybody wants to weigh in. Otherwise, let's move on.
let's move on. So we got basically there is a big shootout when they escape. There is a very funny moment where Jamie Lee Curtis tries to take out some terrorists, drops a machine gun, it rolls down a bunch of stairs and kills like 7 or 8 guys, which
Yeah.
I thought was a fun moment.
Yeah, just rolling down the stairs, firing in slow motion, just dispatching guys left and right.
Yeah,
I mean, that's it's one of the goofier tropes, but it still it finds a place in a film like this and it fits.
yeah, because I do think that the movie from this point, um, there's like a mixture of like action and comedy where we're still taking the action vaguely seriously, but
Mhm.
at this point, the action goes full goofy.
Mhm.
Like because there's several moments like this, like the terrorist whose van is taken out by a seagull.
Oh yeah.
And then possibly one of the most infamous moments in the movie where we get the dramatic romantic kiss backgrounded by a nuclear explosion. It's one of the most ridiculous yet best things I've ever seen.
Yeah. Yeah, it's totally like, if you're doing the thumb test, like the nuclear boy, the thumb test. I think they're too close to that blast.
I think I think so.
but we also have again when he, Arnold, well, this actually we haven't gotten there yet. The Harrier thing is still after all of this.
Oh yeah, it's still after. Yeah.
But yeah, the explosion, the bridge set piece was incredible. They did two things, right? They built a miniature, right, for the main explosions, but they also destroyed like a section of bridge that wasn't being used.
Yeah, I believe that's the case. Yes.
Something like that. But I mean, what a sequence that was with the bridge explosions.
Yeah,
it was incredible.
It's really incredible, and like I think it is both like astounding as like an action set piece and like exciting to watch, but also like you're getting all this kind of fun goofiness as well of like the reaction shots of the various terrorists and the various different vans.
But the one like when they the vans go and the missile hits.
Yeah.
And then it explodes, and then the van kind of ramps up the one part of the exploding the bridge. Like the timing of that, the logistics behind that just blows my mind.
Yeah, like as we kind of said at the start of the episode, you can doubt some things about James Cameron's filmmaking skills, but just as that level of technical detail, that insane level of technical detail, you can't question. Like he's a master at it, and like it's astounding to watch, and it's still 30 years later. This movie's 30 years old, and yeah, there's some things that might not hold up, but that definitely does.
Yeah, I mean, there's when Harry pulls Helen out of the limo as the limo drives off, it's like it's against the green screen, and that that looks fake.
Yeah, sure.
That's not one of those shots that you look and say, man, that really holds up. But the bridge explosions are fantastic.
Yeah, no,
practical.
They look great, and like that's the thing of like the kind of early days of like we're trying things out with CGI. That always is going to look kind of ropey, all these years later. But practical effects, for the most part, they hold up. They generally hold up. And the other thing I was going to mention when you were saying about the moment where he pulls Helen out the limo, I think that I love a kind of oh shit, I'm about to die reaction shot. I think and I think Tia Carrera does a really good one.
Yeah. Right before the bridge or the car drives off the bridge.
Yeah. I think like that's a great trope in action movies of like that kind of thing where you get a cutaway shot to somebody who knows their numbers up and they're like
yeah. There are some memorable ones, but yeah, for sure.
Yeah. For sure. But we are now at the point where Harry steals the Harrier jet, so you can take us into the finale.
I've jumped to this point many times, but it's
but we're not actually here, so you can take us through it, and you can take us through the kind of the kind of final showdown.
Well, after the kiss against the exploding ocean, they find out that the bad guy has kidnapped Dana, who's Harry's daughter, right?
Yep.
So Harry's reaction is to steal a Harrier jet and go save her, as a normal father would do. But this again, like first of all, Harrier jets are just an enigma in and of itself. It's a jet that can take off from a dead stop, straight up in the air. And they obviously not the one that Harry jumps into, but they used real Harrier jets for this film. I think it was 3 of them and Navy pilots or whatever.
Yeah.
But so Harry, again, as he's stealing the jet, it's kind of like a callback from the horse scene when he's not sure on how to fly it, fully. So he's like bumping into stuff and he's saying, he's going, oh, sorry, I'm sorry. He's like apologizing to nobody that can hear him. But it's just, again, a callback to just him being the most polite spy there is. But he flies off, and she wasn't miles and miles away. She was in the same city, right? What is he? She's up on top of some crane. How does she get up there again?
Oh, so like basically Dana steals the key to the bomb, and then he's like, oh, because the terrorists allow some video journalists to come up, and they're like
Faisal, right?
To Faisal and some other guy who apparently is just a journalist. And then he's like showing off the equipment, and he's like, oh, here's the big bomb, and here's the key, and the journalist guy is like, what key? What are you talking about? There's no key here. And then we get a cutaway shot to like Dana looking mischievous, and they're like, Dana's got a key, and then he runs after her, and then she runs up onto like this big crane thing. Yeah,
that was another great moment of the buffoonery of the villain. Like he's grandstanding, and all of a sudden he's like, what, this key right here? Oh, where did it go?
Yeah.
And she takes off with it. Yeah, you're right. So she climbs on the crane, and Arnold shows up in his Harrier. And that's, of course, there's some intricate flying that he catches Dana falling off the crane on one wing, and then Aziz jumps on the plane, and so there's like a fight on top of the plane. It's bizarre, and it's again, you want to talk about the physics of action films. It's crazy. But you got the coup de grace, right, when he falls off and gets his suspenders caught, or his the gun strap caught on the missile, right? And right before the big explosion, you got the Arnold one-liner. You want to deliver it?
You're fired. Which is a classic Arnold one-liner for sure.
Classic.
Yeah.
And from when I said that James Cameron fired the initial writing team, this was like one of two jokes that the initial team had written that James Cameron decided to keep in the film, was the Arnold one-liner.
Yeah, the you're fired thing.
You're fired. Yeah. But you can't have, you waited 2 hours and 20 something minutes to get it. You have to have a one-liner.
Yeah, you do. And there's not a massive amount of one-liners. Like there's the ones that stand out to me is like the opening scene with here's my invitation, and then he and then there's a one in the bathroom fight where he puts the guy's head in the toilet and says cool off. And then there's the you're fired line, and they're kind of the three that stand out. So less one-liners than we often expect from Arnie.
Yeah. But you're fired it's a classic, It's right up there with Stick Around,
Yeah. Or one of my favorites, Let Off Some Steam, Bennett,
Oh yeah. Of course, yeah.
Yeah, and I think like the "You're fired" line is added to because the actor who plays Salim, Art Malik, again, his "oh fuck, I'm about to die" reaction shot is good, is really funny, and he does like a really goofy face, which again betrays the earlier part of the character, but like it plays to what the character is now.
And you also see like they do like a tracking shot of him going from the missile all the way through the building until it hits the chopper on the other side
with his henchmen in it, and then and now all the villains have been taken out, and everything can be we can all live happily ever after, and
until the sequel.
I get. Well, didn't actually happen, but they kind of set it up. Again, like you said, with Helen being kind of slow to ask him questions about like, what are you doing here? Dana, not a lot of surprise when she finds out her dad is a super spy. She's just very accepting of it, just being like, well, you saved me. Great. Let's go back home, I guess. Like
that's another good point. Yeah. My computer salesman dad is flying a Harrier jet.
Just very quickly accepting of it. Just being like, okay, Dad, just help me out. Like
yeah. That's one of those. You don't look too deep into the nuances, I guess.
Absolutely not. But then, yes, we've only got one last scene in the film. Like I've noticed, like a lot of these 90s films don't actually have like these types of scenes, like these like little add-on scenes that wrap things
like
up.
Epilogue.
They don't have like a lot of 90s action films. Just like the action ends and then we just cut to credits. Or we have that kind of classic scene of like somebody's being loaded into the back of an ambulance and then we cut to credits, like that. That seems that, but we get an epilogue here. It's 1 year later. And apparently Helen has acquitted herself so well that the government have just decided to hire her.
She's all in. Yeah. Oh yeah, they're a team now.
Question marks around that, but fine. And she has learned in double quick time in the year. She has learned to be just as great a super spy as anybody else who's been doing it for decades. But
that's right.
So Jamie Lee Curtis is a very talented woman. And then they get called out on a mission. They've taken the code names Boris and Doris, which is a callback to earlier on in the film, and they're at a kind of ambassador's ball. And it is just kind of, it doesn't really set up for a sequel. It's really just kind of another kind of last comedic moment. We run into Simon again. We make him piss his pants again. He runs off again.
It was
And
Helen
then-
that did it this time.
It was Helen that did it this time, pretending her lipstick is a gun.
Yeah.
And then we finish on a tango scene, which is a callback to the very beginning of the movie. And then we just get like Tom Arnold kind of riffing on how he wants to be in the mission, and he's been in the van too long, and you know, that kind of stuff.
He gets
quite funny.
very appropriately, he gets the last word.
He does get the last word, because we think, as they're doing the tango, as the credits roll, we think that's it, but then we get one last Tom Arnold bit, and then we cut to black, and that's the end of True Lies. So I guess it just leaves me to ask if you have any final thoughts or things that you didn't manage to mention that you want to mention now about this film.
Well, nothing that I haven't mentioned, but my final word on this is it's one of those action films that it like we're our stumbling all over myself. Our podcast network, it largely covers the greatest era of action, which is like the 80s for the most part, because our guys, Arnold and Sylvester Stallone, Van Damme, Seagal, James Bond, like that was their heyday. Bond even earlier, but like that was their heyday. Dolph Lundgren. This is, I think, a largely forgotten action film, even though it has Arnold in it. Like it's one that every action fan should have like in their constant rotation. This is a great action film. It's got the mixture of action and comedy. It's definitely a must watch for any action fan. Even though it's not an 80s film, it still belongs among the greats of that era.
Yeah. No, I mean, I would largely agree with that point of view. I think it is a great action film. I think the action set pieces are amazing. I think Arnie's great. I think Jamie Lee Curtis is great. I think their chemistry is great. I think Bill Paxton's hilarious. Tom Arnold does his job well, and I think it's the most I've ever liked Tom Arnold in anything. I would, we have a range of listeners, and most of them are around my age, I guess. But I would say for people who are getting into 90s action, 80s and 90s action, like a lot of these films, there's some parts that haven't aged entirely well. There is there is some bits that can be seen as quite sexist. There is some bits that can be seen as kind of casually racist in the way that a lot of 80s and 90s films are. So there is the odd problematic element, but I think overall it's such an entertaining film that I think the entertainment overrides. I don't think the problematic element sink the film, in the way that some films you look back on and you're like, yeah, there's some fun moments, but the problematic moments are bigger than the fun moments. But I think this is the reverse. I think the fun moments are bigger than the problematic moments. So I would also highly recommend this film. And if you've never seen Arnie being James Bond, then you should definitely check it out. And he's a very different Bond though, because as we mentioned, he is the politest spy of all time.
He's very sorry for messing up people's days.
Yeah. So now that we've covered True Lies, it just leaves me to thank you, Doug, for coming on the show, and just to ask you for your plugs for your podcast, or you want to give your social media handles, all that good stuff. Just promote anything you want to promote in this bit.
Sounds good, and thank you for having me. I had a blast talking about this film. I am a host of Rocky Minute, where we cover the Rocky movies 1 minute of film time at a time. Kind of hit a stalling moment in the middle of Rocky 3. A couple of big life events happened, so plugging away, but we're going to get there. I also, as I mentioned before, I host a Sylvester Stallone podcast with the boss of our network, Ryan, and the Podfather, Craig. And I was doing. I hope Seiko is still interested in finishing up our Arnold project, but we were doing an Arnold Schwarzenegger, brief filmography. We were picking and choosing only the movies that we wanted to talk about. So it's not the good and the bad. It's pretty much just the good. So we did a couple of episodes of that, and I'm just waiting for Seiko to do the go ahead so we can keep moving on that. So that's like another podcast on our broad network, Less of the Action Heroes podcast network, where your lovely show is housed as well.
That is true. So if people want to listen to this show, obviously you can on all your podcast providers, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc., etc. But yes, like Doug's show, we are on the Last of the Action Heroes network. We're very proud to be a part of that. It was cool to be invited. There's a lot of great podcasts. If you are an action fan of the 80s and 90s, it's really a treasure trove for kind of 80s and 90s action fans. So I highly recommend that you check out many of the other shows that you can find there. If you want to follow us on Twitter, you can at 90s Action. I mean, I guess it's called X now. You know, it might have disappeared in the months gone by. But anyway, we're also on Facebook. We might be on Blue Sky at some point. Who knows, man? Who knows? It's a constantly changing social media landscape. But that's all for this time. Please do join us next time when I think we will be talking about Clear and Present Danger. So another spy film, back-to-back spy movies.
Yeah.
So join us for that one. Until then, though, see ya.